she thought she won. She watched me pick up a trash bag with my whole life in it, and laughed, standing there, warm, with a glass of wine. She didn't know. My father spent 5 years preparing for this exact moment, right under her nose, while she was waiting for him to die. He never said a word, never warned her, just watched and waited. And the only thing he left me was this key. She always answered the phone herself. She told everyone it was too hard for him to speak, too hard to remember. When his brother called, she would step into the hallway and close the door with her shoulder. "He's sleeping. I'll tell him." She never did. Soon the calls stopped. One day I asked my father why it was so quiet, why no one came to visit. He looked at his watch. He said, "I guess they're just very busy." White pills. Small. Life-saving at 8 in the morning. She would put the kettle on at 9. When he asked about his dose, she didn't even turn around. "Oh, I forgot. You don't feel the difference anyway." It was the same with the food. She would pull the plate away from his trembling hands. "That's enough. You shouldn't have so much." At night, I saw him standing by the open fridge, just staring at the light, and then closing the door. The worst part happened in the living room. She discussed selling the house while he was sitting right there, not in a whisper, like he was part of the furniture. "He doesn't mind," she'd say into the phone. "He doesn't really understand anymore." In that moment, she looked at him and smiled. The way you smile at a new cabinet. He died on a Tuesday. Gray sky, cold rain, people saying the same empty words. She cried, not loudly, just enough to be seen. "Take what's yours." She said it calmly, like she was helping. I stood there, holding everything I owned in one hand while she locked the door behind me. That was the moment she thought it was over. She didn't know that was the moment it actually started. The key was old, heavy, cold in my palm. He kept it separate, never with the house keys, never with the car. I asked him once what it was for. He said, "You'll know when it's time." At the time, I thought it was just something sick people say. I was wrong, because that key didn't open a door. The basement hadn't been opened in years. The air smelled like dust, old metal, paper. The lock resisted, like it didn't want to be disturbed. When it opened, nothing looked special. Until I noticed the wall, too clean, too new, behind the furnace. That's when I realized my father hadn't been weak. He had been waiting. I stood there for a long time, staring at that wall behind the furnace. It didn't make sense. Everything else in the basement was old, cracked paint, rusted shelves, dust that had settled for years. But that wall was clean, too clean, like it had been touched recently, like someone cared. I pressed my palm against it, cold, solid. Then I felt it, a seam, barely noticeable, like a mistake someone hoped no one would ever look for. I didn't open it that night. That was the first thing I understood about my father's plan. It wasn't about rushing, it was about patience. Over the next few days, she started acting different, lighter. She talked louder on the phone, laughed more. The house wasn't ours anymore, it was hers. She brought in an agent, walked them through the rooms, talked about potential, about how fast it would sell. She didn't look at the walls the same way my father used to. She saw price tags, not memories. I stayed quiet. That was the second thing my father had taught me without ever saying it out loud. If you talk too early, people see you coming. I went back to the basement during the day, measured the wall, counted the bricks. Behind the furnace, I found a small metal plate, hidden by soot and shadow. The key fit, not perfectly, but well enough. When the wall opened, the sound wasn't loud. It was soft, controlled, like it was designed not to give itself away. Inside was a small room, no windows, just shelves, a desk, and a camera mounted in the corner, long dead. On the desk were folders, thick ones, labeled, dated, and a single envelope on top. It had my name on it. I didn't open it right away. I sat down instead, in the same chair he must have used. That's when it hit me. He had known, not guessed, not suspected, known. The folders weren't about money, not at first. They were about time, dates, phone calls, missed prescriptions, signed delivery receipts for medication that never reached him. There were audio transcripts, notes from a lawyer I had never met, and a timeline that didn't end with his death. That was when my phone vibrated, a number I didn't recognize. The message was short. "You found it." I didn't reply. An hour later, another message came in. "Good. Don't change anything." I realized then that I wasn't alone in this. I had never been. She scheduled the signing for the following week, the sale of the house, the final papers. She told everyone it was a clean break, a new chapter. She wore black again, not for mourning, for authority. I watched her practice the smile in the mirror, the one that said she had won something fair. The night before the signing, I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Short. My father never wasted words. He wrote that weakness is a costume people wear when they think no one is watching. That patience frightens cruel people more than anger ever could. And that everything she had done, every call, every omission, every accident, had already been documented. He ended it with one line. Let her finish. The next morning, she walked into the room like a queen, confident, untouchable. She didn't look at me once. The lawyer cleared his throat, said there was one final item to review before signatures. She sighed, smiled politely, like this was a waste of her time. The screen turned on. My father appeared, sitting exactly where I had sat days before, calm, clear, very much alive in that moment. She froze. He explained the clause she had signed years ago, buried in paperwork she never read, a contingency triggered only if I was removed from the house. Her face changed slowly. Confusion first, then panic, then something closer to understanding. The assets weren't hers. The house wasn't hers. The money she had already spent, not hers either. Everything reverted. Everything transferred. To me. The room was silent. She tried to speak. No one listened. Later, I watched her walk down the same steps I had walked, holding a trash bag, looking at the ground. The door closed behind her, and for the first time, the house felt quiet again. Not empty, just at peace. I stayed in that house for a while after that, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to understand it. There's a strange silence that only comes after something cruel leaves. Not relief, not happiness, just space. I walked through the rooms she used to control, the kitchen where she decided when he ate, the hallway where she ended conversations before they ever reached him, the living room where she talked about selling his life while he was still breathing. Nothing looked different, but everything felt lighter. People asked me if it felt like revenge. If it felt good, it didn't. It felt precise. That's the part no one talks about. Real revenge isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't celebrate. It waits. My father understood something most people never do. Cruelty depends on speed, on confusion, on people reacting too fast. So he slowed everything down. While she was rushing, while she was counting money that wasn't hers yet, while she thought control meant power, he was building proof. Every missed call, every forgotten pill, every word she thought no one would remember. He didn't fight her, he documented her, and that's why she lost. Not because she was evil, but because she was careless. She assumed weakness meant blindness. She assumed silence meant surrender. She was wrong. Sometimes I'd take the key out of my pocket and just hold it. Not because I need to open anything, but because it reminds me how long real plans take. 5 years of saying nothing, of watching everything. If there's one thing I learned from him, it's this: never rush justice. Let people finish. Let them sign their own name at the bottom of it. Because the moment they think they've won, that's usually when it starts. She thought she won. For a long time, I didn't talk about any of this. Not online, not to friends. People have strange reactions to stories like this. Some want a villain they can hate. Some want a hero they can cheer for. But real life doesn't work like that. She wasn't a monster every day. That's the uncomfortable truth. Most days, she was just efficient, quiet, convincing. That's why it worked for so long. Cruel people don't survive by being cruel all the time. They survive by being reasonable in public and invisible in private. That's what makes them dangerous. And that's why my father never exposed her early. He knew something most victims don't realize until it's too late. If you accuse too soon, you become the problem. So he waited until there was no argument left to have. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not stopping her earlier. If I regret staying quiet. I don't. Because silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's evidence being collected. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is let someone keep talking, keep acting, keep believing they're untouchable, until one day they look around and realize there's nowhere left to stand. If you're watching this and any part of it feels familiar, take your time. Pay attention, and don't rush to confront someone who's already documenting themselves, because the truth doesn't need to be loud to be final. Some people lose everything the moment they think they've secured it, and they never understand why.